When the first Batman Caped Crusader trailer landed, we were given a glimpse of a seductive woman in green surrounded by plants. Most Batman fans, including myself, immediately recognized her as Poison Ivy, but it turns out she was actually an obscure Superman character, Thorn. Now, this isn't the first time that Batman has borrowed another hero's characters. See also Onomatopoeia and Gentleman Ghost from the first season, who are Green Arrow and Hawkman villains respectively. So perhaps we should have expected something a little more left field than another version of Poison Ivy. Despite the vaguely similar costumes, these characters are actually quite different. While Poison Ivy is widely recognised as an eco-warrior anti-hero, Thorn was almost always a violent vigilante operating out of Metropolis. It is worth noting that there is more than one character called Thorn in the comics though. During the Golden Age in the 1940s, an earlier iteration named Rose Canton fought the Flash using actual plant powers, and she ended up marrying the Green Lantern, and there was a whole thing there. But I'm not going to get into that because Caped Crusader completely ignores that version and instead focuses on the second Rose and Thorn. She first appeared in Superman's Girlfriend Lois Lane number 105, published in 1970, and was defined primarily by her severe dissociative identity disorder. She was the alter of Rose Forrest, whose psyche fractured after her father, a police detective, was brutally murdered by a massive crime syndicate known as the 100. Traumatized and unable to process her grief, Rose developed a Jekyll and Hyde dynamic. By day, Rose is docile, sweet-natured, and entirely incapable of violence. However, when Rose falls asleep, her repressed rage manifests as Thorn. Operating essentially as a kung fu fighting sleepwalker, Thorn relentlessly hunts the criminal underworld, leaving Rose to wake up with no memory of her nightly crusade. Over the decades, DC repeatedly leaned into her Batman-like tragedy, most notably in a 2004 reboot that changed her backstory so that both of her parents were murdered in front of her as a child, pulling her even closer to the Batman archetype. And that is probably why she ended up appearing in Caped Crusader, where they make the Batman parallels even more obvious. In the episode Her Dark Reflection, Rose Forrest lives with her father Phil, who had formerly been a police officer in the GCPD and walked a beat with Jim Gordon back in the day. He took early retirement to look after his young daughter Rose after his wife had a mental breakdown and ran away. The pair work in their flower shop, which counts Alfred Pennyworth among their clientele. Rose, for her part, pines for some lost love whose picture she keeps in a locket around her neck. While they don't say what happened to him, her father tells her to put him out of her mind. One day she'll find her Prince Charming, someone strong enough to protect her. So the implication there is that Rose is weak and powerless, her father controls her life, and he refuses to let her be with someone that wouldn't be able to protect her. Now, rather than being killed by a large criminal syndicate, her father was gunned down by the Riddler after he was perceived to have stepped out of line. Riddler is a brutal gangster gathering collection money from her father. While he had the money to pay, Riddler suggested that they might be able to come to an alternate arrangement if he handed over his daughter instead, which is pretty gross. He firmly refused and paid his debt instead, which might be fine for most other people, but Riddler is not most other people. He acted like everything was okay, not a big deal, but he returned a few moments after leaving and performed a drive-by shooting. Phil pushed Rose out of the line of fire but was gunned down as a result. Now poor meek Rose is entirely alone in the world. But that night she had a revelation, or a serious mental health crisis depending on your perspective. Her mind split and Rose allowed the powerful and seductive Thorn to come to the forefront. What I like about this scene is how reminiscent it is of the Season 1 flashback to the night the Waynes were killed and Bruce Wayne became Batman. While young Bruce laid in bed blankly staring at the ceiling and weeping, Rose had trouble sleeping, but when she laid down, clutching the pendant with the picture of her lover, she closed her eyes for a moment and out came Thorn. She smashed up the pendant and rooted through her drawers to find a revealing dress that her mother had left behind. A quick swing by the local sex shop and she completed the look. A spiked choker and belt combo, a red wig, and a dark green lipstick. She purposefully crafts herself into the mold of a classic noir femme fatale, a trope where seduction is weaponized and male desire leads directly to danger. This transformation marks the explosive release of Rose's deeply repressed anger and sexuality. Under her father's protective paternalistic oversight, Rose was conditioned to be meek, passive, and waiting for a savior. It remains ambiguous whether Phil genuinely believed his daughter was too fragile for the world, or if he was simply deeply uncomfortable with her developing a sexual and romantic identity of her own. Regardless, he felt that no man would ever be good enough for her, but the end result was a stifled young woman. And in the wake of her trauma, Thorn emerges as an eruption of everything Rose was forced to keep locked away. She embodies the classic noir femme fatale, where raw fury and dangerous, uninhibited desire merge into a lethal new identity that refuses to be controlled by any man. Now, she didn't let the fact that the sex shop was closed stop her from forming her new identity. She just smashed in the window and took what she wanted. But on the way out, she was caught by a patrolman who makes it clear that he will let her go if she will sleep with him. Little Rose probably would have collapsed hyperventilating at the suggestion, but Thorn is entirely different. She doesn't submit to him, even when he slaps her across the face. No, she hits him in the nuts, uppercuts him, and then knocks him out with his own gun. And from there, she begins her revenge scheme. While Rose may not have been the most worldly of women, Thorn knows exactly how a man like Edward Nygma works. She heads to his club, Stumpers, and sits within his line of sight. Once he makes eye contact, she will then strike. But before things kick off, she's approached by Riddler's long-suffering girlfriend Lilly Gardner, someone else with a plant-themed name, I might add, and she lets Thorn know that sure, Eddie is making goo-goo eyes at her right now, but once he's had a way with her and the shine wears off, he'll return to her. What I find quite interesting about this scene is how little Lilly respects herself. Instead of directing her anger at Eddie for his misogyny and infidelity, she directs her insecurity at the woman Eddie is currently eyeing, trying to put her in her place. And it's kind of sad watching Lilly playing the piano in the club with Nygma carrying on right under her nose. But the sadness is offset by how blind he is. If he had paid close enough attention to Thorn's face, then he might have recognized Rose, but to him women are interchangeable. This is perfectly illustrated by the fact that he never learns their names, he just calls them all baby. And I talked about this and Nygma's deep-seated insecurities in a video all about him, linked to in the info button, so add that to your watch later list if you want to hear more about that. But what makes Thorn stand out from the others, aside from her seductive outfit, is her confidence. When Thorn approaches Nygma, she casually interrupts the business conversation with corrupt cop Arnold Flass, makes a compelling argument to undermine him, steps into Nygma's space, and takes a slow sip straight from his drink. In the visual language of Noir, a crime boss's drink is his symbol of absolute comfort and status. Taking it without permission is an act of dominance, and Nygma is 100% there for it. To an arrogant narcissist like Nygma, this bold intrusion looks like irresistible flirtation. A stunning woman so captivated by him that she cannot help but cross the room, but Thorn is merely feeding his ego to build a trap. By brushing Flass aside and claiming Nygma's glass, she simultaneously dismisses Gotham's corrupt police mob hierarchy and asserts that she's not afraid of either man. It's an intimate invasion of his space disguised as seduction, and the irony is that while Nygma thinks he's eyeing a new prize, he's actually looking at his executioner. From this point on, Thorn has him in her clutches and she builds his confidence in her. She encourages him in his wild crimes, goes with him on heists, and gets into shootouts with the law and Batman. In fact, she even demonstrates her own suitability as a villain when she doses Batman with Digitalis, a poisonous plant that slows the heartbeat to the point that it knocks him out, but it doesn't kill him. While Nygma wants to kill Batman there and then, she encourages him to take his time and enjoy the act. He ties Batman up, puts him in a truck, and then rolls it off a cliff's edge. But Thorn made sure that they waited until Batman woke up. That way he had a good chance of escaping. It's subtle, but it's clear that Batman plays a part in her revenge scheme. She left behind a matchbook from Riddler's club as a clue, the same clue that she had followed to find Riddler in the first place, and waited for Batman to turn up. This allowed her to suggest that she got Riddler to safety, a secret love nest where no one will ever find him. She had marked the entrance with a love heart with his name on it, but in reality she had taken him back to the scene of the crime, the flower shop where he murdered her father. And by the time Riddler realizes what's going on, it's too late, as Thorn guns him down. It's a fitting end for such a blind and arrogant man. With her revenge complete, she leaves town on a train, potentially never to return, but as she looks out the window at her old life being left behind, she sees Rose, who reaches out approvingly. That final scene on the train is what makes this adaptation stand out. In the comics, Rose and Thorn are trapped in a tragic perpetual war for control over a fractured mind, but Caped Crusader gives them resolution. By stripping away decades of comic book clutter, the show distills Thorn down to her absolute core, a tragic, dark mirror to Batman himself. Both Bruce Wayne and Rose Forrest were created by grief, fashioning costumed alters to reclaim power in a corrupt city. But where Bruce remains permanently trapped inside his own dark crusade, Rose's story offers a rare sense of closure. Thorn gave the meek Rose her agency back, and in return, Rose gave Thorn her blessing. It's a beautifully concise, complete arc wrapped in a single episode, proving that sometimes taking a forgotten DC character and paring them down to their rawest emotional truth makes for some brilliant television. But here is my question for you. Can a vigilante mask actually heal the trauma that created it, or is Bruce Wayne just doing it wrong? Let me know what you think in the comments below, because I will be reading them all. Special thanks to my channel members, they helped to make this video possible, and if you want to see your name on screen and get early access to all of my upcoming videos, then join the channel now. Thanks for watching everybody, see you next time.